Okay, so story time about how my gay best friend screwed my boyfriend. So a little background information, I was 17 and in 11th grade whenever this all happened. But whenever I was in 5th grade, I had moved to a fairly large town. And ever since then, I had had the same group of friends, which were these 3 other girls, and then this guy named Louise, and then me, of course. Now, Louise decided to come out in 9th grade, so 2 years prior to this whole situation, and things were extremely hard on him. Even though the other girls and I, you know, tried to give him the utmost support that we could, all the guys in school pretty much hated him and they would bully him all the time. And then the girls in our school would just be fake nice to him because they thought it was cool to have a gay best friend. But they were all just like super mean. They would call him mean names. They would make homophobic comments towards him. Just the whole 9 yards. Like, this kid really went through it. And you know, instead of just like sticking by what they said, whenever they needed something from him, he was still really nice, even though they were all assholes. They would just pretty much take advantage of how kind he was. Poor Louise. I don't know what it's like to be in that situation, but I could not imagine. Like, high school is already so hard as it is. Like, nobody needs that in their life. And not to mention, whenever there was a party being thrown, all of us girls would be invited. Louise wouldn't be invited. So one person from the friend group usually would stay behind and just comfort him. And it was typically me because I was like low-key closer with Louise. Like, I would say, you know, like all of us were very supportive of him, but I was the most supportive, if that makes sense. Like, you know, I would always be hyping him up whenever he looked good. Like, even when he didn't, you know, I would just always hype him up. And I would always, you know, encourage him to talk to his crushes and stuff, just really trying to be the most supportive friend that I could be. It was like a real kind of like sister bond that him and I had, which was, I feel like, really good for him because he had no support at home either. Like, his parents were just assholes. They would always try to, quote, talk him out of being gay. Like, what the actual F? I don't know how that works, but good luck with that, sis. But they even kicked him out for a whole week whenever he came out. So he tried to spend as little time there as possible, and I don't blame them because the times that I had went over there, they even made me feel uncomfortable with some of the stuff that they would say. But enough about his trauma in his life. The one day, Louise had this amazing idea of us downloading Tinder. He was like, come on, like, we're 17, you know, we don't really go out that much. We need to start meeting new people, this, that, and the next. At first, I thought it was a bad idea, but then after a little convincing, I was like, you know what? Why not? YOLO, right? So we both made accounts and we made it so that way it said 18, of course. So after being on the app for about a week and matching with plenty of guys that I had absolutely no interest in, I matched with this one guy named Caleb. And this man was fine as fuck. He was super tall, super nice, and just overall extremely attractive. And when I told Louise about him, he was like, oh girl, like, you have to date him. Like, this is your man. So I did. Caleb and I would talk on FaceTime. We would text each other and Snapchat each other 24/7. And the best part was he was also 17. So it wasn't like I was dating some 30-year-old weirdo. But then again, they wouldn't be a weirdo because the app is for people who are over 18. You guys get the point. So we lived like 25 minutes away from each other. And after a few weeks of him and I just talking, we finally decided why not meet up. The first place that we met was a cafe restaurant type place, which I thought would be safe for our first time meeting. I did not want to bring him to my house, not knowing that much about him, because I feel like whenever you meet somebody in person, you really get their actual vibes, if that makes sense. Well, shortly after meeting in person, him and I decided to make things official. We both deleted our Tinders, and I thought I was extremely in love with this guy, even though it hadn't even been that long. Well, the first month or so was absolutely perfect, no complaints. He would take me on the best dates and just made me feel like I was the only girl in the world. Well, then after the first month, I would say I realized that every time that we hung out, he was spending a lot of time on his phone, which I know could have been anything. But for a person who does online school and, quote, doesn't have that many friends, He was Snapchatting and texting a lot. So then, who do I decide to ask for advice? I decide to ask Louise for advice. Of course, he's my best friend. I was like, should I look on his phone when he goes out of the room? Like, what should I do? Like, sis was reading through every single option in the freaking book. And Louise, my bestie, tells me, oh, you're probably just overthinking things because you like him so much. I wouldn't worry about it. Don't do anything that could ruin your guys' relationship. How ironic. Louise, 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 you sneaky little bastard. So, as anybody would, I was sad at first whenever Louise was not, like, giving me any advice. I mean, he did, but it was not best friend advice, you know? So even though I was upset, I still decided to go through with my plan, which was to find out who the fuck Caleb was texting 24/7. Who's more important than me? Nobody. Get it together. Well, the next time that I had went over to Caleb's, of course, his phone is going off profusely again. So this time I'm like, hey, like, who are you texting so much? And he's like, oh, just a friend from my old football team. And I'm like, oh, well, you know, maybe sometime you could introduce us, since you want to text them so much when we're together. So it totally, like, you know, flies over his head that I'm clearly upset and pissed off. And he just goes, oh, yeah, sure, babe. Well, every time for the next 2 weeks, whenever him and I were supposed to hang out, he canceled on me. So now I'm really suspicious that something is going on. And it didn't even, like, come to me that I also hadn't really seen Louise that much in the past 2 weeks. Anyways, so like I said, that thought was out the window. But now I'm thinking he has to be seeing another girl. So me being the crazy bitch that I am, I decide to go and buy a tile from the store and put it in his car. Cause why not? No, I didn't do it and like sneak over his house, you know, in the middle of the night. No. He saw me like once after school for probably like an hour, but he just decided to get a shower and get ready for something else. And while he did that, I went and put it in his car. Well, after a couple days, nothing was too suspicious. Nothing for me to really, you know, get upset over. Well, a few days later, he cancels plans on me again. And I want to say about 20 minutes later, I decide to check the map. And what do you know? He is outside of Louise's house. So I try calling Caleb, I get no response. I try calling Louise, I get no response. So I drive to Louise's house to see if they're there. But then I check the map again and they are back at Caleb's house. So I go, I knock on the door, I ask if Louise is there. They're like, no, he just left with a friend. So then I check the map again and they're at Caleb's house. And to be honest, I didn't really think that Louise was at Caleb's house just because I thought, you know, oh, maybe he had to drop something off to him or something like that. You know, I didn't even really think that they were friends. So I go to Caleb's house. His mom lets me in. She doesn't even know that there's a friend there with him. A friend. And by the way, Caleb's excuse was that he had to drive his mom to work, which was an hour away. Well, I go down to the basement and while I'm running down there at the bottom of the stairs, I see Louise's shoes. And I never thought that Louise would do like, you know, anything to damage our friendship. So I'm just thinking, oh my gosh, like why wouldn't they tell me that they're hanging out? Like the stupid bitch that I am. So at this point, I decide that I might as well just surprise them. And I run down the stairs, barge open into the room. Next thing I know, I see Caleb and Louise scrambling to put their clothes back on. I was in so much shock that I like knocked over his fucking $4,000 computer and I was screaming and then I stormed out of the house and then all I could hear as I was leaving was his mom screaming at him. So that night I told all the girls what happened and we all came to a unanimous decision that we no longer wanted to be friends with him. So they blocked him, as they should. And I didn't block him because I wanted to see if he would text me if he had anything to say for himself. But of course he didn't because he's a coward. But Louise and Caleb continued to date. But I ended up hearing some tea about Louise transferring schools because the bullying got extremely bad, and for like a month his parents like weren't gonna allow him to transfer schools unless he tried to stay in that environment and see if things would get better. But it didn't, because he had nobody to protect him anymore from being bullied. And my thing is like, if you want me to be honest, I don't feel bad. I really don't. I mean, my thing is I don't think anybody should be bullied for how they are, but at the same time, I'm not gonna stand there and stick up for somebody who stabbed me in the back whenever I gave them the utmost support that I could. Like, what he did was actually fucked up. And then I was getting made fun of because my boyfriend left me for a dude.
Am I wrong for naming my cat something my sister was going to name her daughter? Again with the names, man. This always causes rift between people. Sister, Alice, 29 female, had some fertility issues. She eventually got pregnant a few years ago. Alice wanted the gender of the baby to be a surprise, so she wouldn't know until he was born. She ended up picking out two names, one if it was a boy and one if it was a girl. She ended up having a boy. When she was talking... I can see. When she was talking about girl names, she floated the idea Sandra, and her nickname could be Sandy. She did not end up using the name, and it wasn't even their pick for the name if it was a girl. It was their second or third choice. Anyway, fast forward to last week, I found and rescued an orange cat. After I knew she wasn't lost, I decided that I would keep her. I was trying to think of names that would work, and one of my friends suggested Sandy. This friend did not know that my sister had brought up the name Sandy for her child. I loved the name and decided that was what I was going to be naming her. When I told my parents and sister about this, my sister got kind of quiet and asked if I could change it. She said that Sandy was what she wanted to name her daughter if she had one. I honestly did not know she was trying to have another child and did not even make the connection or remember she also liked the name. She said that I should change it and would be an asshole for stealing her name. I really like the name Sandy for this cat, so would I be the asshole if I didn't change it? Here's the thing, right? You gotta pick and choose your battles. If you care about your relationship with your sister, which I assume you do, you change it. It's just the name, right? I mean, the cat won't give two shits if you name it Sandy, Patrick, or SpongeBob, you know? So, that's the thing. But I don't know. Why do people make such big deals about this? I think you would be the asshole, sorry.
Storytime about how my parents caught me selling my undies online. Disclaimer is not my story time. Send me on Instagram. I'm extremely spoiled. My family is extremely rich. This allows me to buy whatever I want. The problem is my dad caught me sneaking out of my window, so he grounded me for 2 months and took away my allowance. And my allowance is a lot. My dad usually gave me $150 a week. With that money, I would go to Starbucks every single day before school, and I would also treat my friends to Starbucks every now and then, more like every day. My friends and I would go to restaurants and have fancy dinners and lunches, and I also had a car. I would also go shopping almost every single Friday with my friends. I would get manicures and pedicures, and I could basically buy myself whatever I wanted just by asking my dad for the money. But now that I was grounded, that was not going to happen. By the way, I'm 20 now, but this was 3 years ago, so I was 17 when all of this happened. I can confidently say that I was like the queen bee in my high school. Number 1, I was in the cheerleading squad. Number 2, I was super pretty popular and had lots of money. Therefore, everyone wanted to hang out with me. I knew that I needed to maintain my status and also the life that I had become accustomed to. Not being able to go to Starbucks every single morning really made me depressed. That probably made you roll your eyes, but I said what I said. Now, there was no way I was gonna go get a job somewhere. You would never catch me working at a cafe or a restaurant or something like that. So I knew I had to start making my own money online somehow. I did some research and found out that people would sell pictures and video of their feet. So I signed up for this stupid website and decided to do it. The problem was that by the end of the week, I had only made $46. This was clearly not enough. So I did some more research and found out that you could actually sell your undies. So I took my last $200, went to Victoria's Secret and stocked up on undies. And this is when things get really fun. Part 2 is up. Part 2 of how my parents caught me selling my undies online. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. Send me on Instagram. So I took my last $200, went to Victoria's Secret and stocked up on undies. I signed up to this website and within a week, I had about 80 orders. So that means in 1 week, I sold $2,000 worth of my own underwear. This is when I realized that I could charge way more than I had been. So I doubled the price and the following week, I made $4,000. So here's the first mistake I made. I decided to tell my girlfriends about it and they decided to sign up and start selling their own undies. After a month, all of my friends and I were selling our undies, and we were all making bank. This also meant that we were spending lots of money. I started buying designer handbags and shoes. One of my friends even put a down payment to a car, and her parents started asking her tons of questions. And so did mine. Part 3 is up. Part 3 of how my parents caught me selling my undies online. Disclaimers are not my story time, but send me on Instagram. When my parents realized that I was buying all these designer bags and shoes, they started asking me questions. I was strong and I kept my mouth shut. Now my friends, on the other hand, who were also selling their undies, one of them got questioned by her parents and she gave up all the information. She even told her parents that I was the mastermind behind everything and that I had told all the other girls to start selling their undies, which was true. So it was official, I had been caught. Of course, my mom's friend runs straight over to my house and she starts spilling all the beans to my parents. My dad and mom came straight to my room and started rummaging through everything. That's when they find all my purses, my shoes, had stacks of cash in my drawers, and under my mattress. All of my friends got grounded, but my parents decided to take it a step further. They were so disgusted with me that they actually kicked me out of the house. But the good news is I had a lot of money, so I got myself a really nice apartment. So jokes on my parents. With all the money that I made, I decided to start a side hustle. I have my own employees and run my business from my house. My parents and I still talk, and my dad's even invested into my new company. When I look back at what I did, I do feel shame, but at the same time, I've become so successful from that money. What should I invest in next?
My husband is a transgender man and we've always wanted to start a family together. I have a huge fear of pregnancy, so he offered to carry the baby. It was an insane process. He had to stop taking testosterone for a long time, but he was amazing throughout the whole process and I did everything in my power to help him feel more comfortable. None of my family know that he's transgender. They're homophobic, transphobic, all the phobics, but our friends know. He posted an ultrasound on his private Instagram, not knowing that my sister follows him on a burner account. Well, she saw the photo and told my whole family. They were furious that I wouldn't tell them. Our plan was always to say that we adopted. They assumed I was the one pregnant and blew up on me, so I just let it go and rolled with the lie because I wasn't going to out my husband. The first couple of months, I let them visit. Eventually, I'd start eating big meals and purposely bloating myself to the point of discomfort so I'd look pregnant. They said around the 6-month mark that I was remarkably small, but I just played it off. Eventually, I couldn't lie any longer, so I looked for every excuse in the book not to see my family. I turned down the offers of baby showers, gender reveal parties, and anything that would require us seeing each other. Luckily, my family lives an hour away and we all live busy lifestyles, so them randomly visiting wasn't an issue. The one time they did pop in unexpectedly, we were out of the house. If they FaceTimed, I made a point to be in bed feeling horribly sick so I couldn't give the bump update. I lied my ass off and they just thought that I had a rough pregnancy. My husband gave birth a year ago and went straight back on testosterone, and now we're happy as ever. My family have met our daughter and they adore her. However, a week ago, after an argument between myself and a friend, said friend decided to out my husband by messaging my family and included proof. They did it by adding everybody to a group chat, posting screenshots and basically the whole story, then saying, "I'll leave you all to discuss." Then they left the chat and blocked me and my husband. In a transphobic rage, my mother raced to my home and all but beat my front door down. I had to call the cops. I've been disowned, but that hasn't stopped the daily calls and texts coming from my parents, aunts, uncles, siblings, and etc. They've been leaving nasty transphobic slurs on my voicemail and other hateful crap. I ended up crying to my friend yesterday who told me that I should have been honest with my family as it would have saved me a lot of heartache. That, or we said we miscarried, then adopted later. I'm not happy things played out the way they did. I just feel so sad now. Was I wrong to lie to my family in order to protect my husband? Crime Fanatic Friday, Part 2, The Girl Who Survived a Serial Killer. Jennifer Aspenson had just managed to break free from her restraints and pop the trunk of her abductor's car. He gets out and slams it shut again. He gets in his car to drive off when his tire gets stuck in the soft sand on the shoulder of the desert. Jennifer manages to pop open the trunk once again and listens to the voice screaming in her head telling her to run for her life. The man grabs a machete and starts chasing after her. As she's sprinting along the deserted highway, by some miracle, a truck is driving towards her. The truck stops and it turns out to be 2 Marines. They quickly put her in the backseat and try to go after the captor, but she urges them not to as he has a gun. The Marines clothe her as she tells them what happened. She had been tortured for nearly 2 hours in that desert. The Marines take her to a patrol station in the nearest town 20 minutes away. However, her nightmare was far from over because no one believed Jennifer's story, including her mother or police. She was forced into thinking that she had some crazy episode and moved on with her life, believing that she'd never see him again. Approximately 4 years later in 1996, Chicago was plagued by 3 consecutive murders that all shared the same MO. Hands tied, naked, discarded in water, and shot by the same weapon. However, police had no leads. It wasn't until a sex worker gave a tip about a John who had requested to restrain her. She remembered hearing about the other victims and reported it to police. This John turned out to be a man named Andrew Urialis, 32 and an ex-Marine. He had recently been arrested for possession of a firearm that turned out to be the exact one used in the Chicago murders. Urialis confessed to everything, including his murders in California, also outlining the details of Jennifer's kidnapping. They interviewed her and she pointed his picture out as the man who assaulted her 5 years prior. Urialis had murdered 8 women and Aspenson was the only one who survived. She attended every trial and testified against Urialis. He was found guilty of his crimes and put on death row. In 2018, he was sentenced to death in California. Less than a month later, he carried out his own sentence and killed himself in his cell. Jennifer went on to become a proud mother, public figure, author, and wife. She released her book, The Girl in the Treehouse, about her ordeal in 2018. She also starred in an episode of I Survived a Serial Killer, which is available on Hulu.
Am I the asshole for refusing to fire my personal trainer per his wife's request? I, 43 female, hired my personal trainer Alex in mid-2018 through the gym. I asked for someone who understands chronic pain because I've had it for 20 years and need help managing it. Swimming did wonders for me until my body began to develop negative reactions to pool chemicals. This is why I decided to switch to the gym. Long story short, Alex helped beyond expectation. He helped me improve so much that a few months ago, my doctor actually switched me to mild pain medication and lowered the doses too. As a token of appreciation, I gave Alex an early Christmas card last week with $50 on it. Just a simple thank you. Am I the asshole for refusing to fire my personal trainer per his wife's request? Today I went for solo training and a woman approached me claiming to be Alex's wife. She accused me of getting friendly with Alex and demanded that I ask the gym to switch trainers. I refused and she got aggressive, so I got the staff involved and they removed her. Later, I told friends about the incident and they said I was disrespectful and should have honored her wishes. Though I don't think Alex's wife's insecurity is my problem, I feel bad about possibly getting him in trouble at home. Edited to add that I never thought of the possibility of a stalker imposter and now I'm getting the chills. I never even thought of that. I'll definitely ask him about it as soon as possible.
Saw you come in until you turned me around. I used to think I was nothing, but look at this love we found. So give me your hand like you took mine. No, I don't ever wanna see you cry. Oh yeah, no more tears. Oh yeah, no more tears. Take that chance, we'll be fine. No, I don't ever wanna see you cry. Oh yeah.
My wife wants to have another baby, despite both agreeing never to get pregnant again after her first pregnancy being a nightmare. So 2 years ago, my wife gave birth to our baby boy. He is wonderful and we both love him very much. My wife had an absolutely horrible pregnancy experience. She was in good health before the pregnancy, as was I. Neither of us were athletes or anything, but we casually exercised and were conscious of what we ate, but weren't on strict diets or anything. Despite being in good health, her pregnancy was awful. She threw up almost every day for the first 2 trimesters, her legs and feet became shockingly swollen, she developed diabetes and high blood pressure, and her liver and kidneys became at risk of being damaged, on and off anemia issues, and a whole book of other random things that I can't remember all of. All of this was despite working so hard with her doctors to mitigate the issues. She was put on many medications, given diet plans, low-stress stretching exercises. She had to stop working in the 3rd month because of how sick she became. I helped her all that I could. My entire life outside of work revolved around caring for her. I made all her meals, which became increasingly restrictive as more complications arose and as she was put on and taken off various medications. I bathed her, dressed her, cleaned up her vomit multiple times a week, changed so many bed sheets because she would sweat profusely or accidentally pee herself. Sometimes because she was in too much pain to get up, sometimes because she couldn't realize she needed to pee, cleaned her poo a few times, helped her wipe herself, and at times I felt like a live-in nurse for a severely disabled person, if that helps paint a picture of it. It was awful and dirty, but I knew that I needed to do all of the things for her, and I wanted to do all I could to alleviate her suffering. But the worst part was the changes in her mental state. I could have done all of this with a smile on my face if she didn't become so cruel and violent during the pregnancy. She had previously never ever been abusive in any way. We were loving. When we had disagreements, we never even raised our voices. We sat and talked. She completely changed while she was pregnant. She yelled at me, swore at me, called me every slur known to man, threw things at me, hit me, told her parents I didn't love her, broke doors, shattered glasses and plates, threatened to kill me. I'd serve her food in bed and she'd throw it on the ground if she didn't like it. After doing this for the 3rd time with oatmeal, I told her I wouldn't serve her oatmeal anymore because I was tired of having to spend hours on my knees digging dried oats out of the carpet. She exploded at that, because oatmeal was one of the few things that didn't make her nauseous at the time, and threw a coffee mug at my face, which gave me a black eye. This kind of thing became constant and increasingly worse as time went on. After giving birth, she stayed in the hospital for almost 2 weeks at her doctor's request because she had so many complications. I took the baby home after the first week. She eventually came home and had some issues with postpartum depression. But thanks to the close observance of her doctor, it was addressed relatively quickly and she was put on medication. So here we are, 2 years later, and the woman that she was while pregnant doesn't exist anymore. She is back to her old self, still having some lasting but minor physical issues from the pregnancy, but overall is healthy again, mentally and physically. I won't lie, it took me some time to love her again. After I took the baby home, there was a part of me that hoped she wouldn't come back from the hospital. I had no positive feelings for her at that time. I slept in a different room for 4 months afterward. We didn't go to counseling because we just didn't have the time, but eventually, after many talks, I realized that the woman she was while pregnant is gone. She is extremely sorry and regrets everything, and can't explain why she did what she did, but is disgusted with who she was. And around our son's first birthday, we agreed that she would never get pregnant again, due to how dangerous her pregnancy was for her, and how abusive she became toward me. Our relationship is good and loving now, and we both love our son very much. We are happy again. But, earlier this week, she mentioned she wouldn't mind having another kid in an offhanded comment. This obviously shocked me. We had agreed to never do it again. I didn't address the comment at the time, but over the next day, I kept thinking about it, and that night I asked her what she meant by that comment. She said she'd been thinking about it, and she decided she wants to try for a daughter and suggests going off her birth control. I probably didn't handle this as well as I could have, but I just stared at her and said, no. She said, what do you mean no? You just don't get to say no. I said no, I'm not doing that again, and we had an agreement. I will not even consider the thought of you being pregnant again. She started crying, saying it's not fair. We have a boy and she wants a girl too. I explained that we can't predict it will be a girl. What happens if it's another boy? And what happens if you die from another pregnancy? She wouldn't continue talking and just cried. I went to sleep in another room. That was Tuesday night. I've been sleeping in the living room, and we basically haven't said more than 50 words to each other since then. I don't know what to do. I don't know where this is coming from. It's honestly insane. She could literally die from another pregnancy, and I will not be her slave and punching bag for 9 months again. Plus, we have a toddler now. If she were to get pregnant, I wouldn't be able to give her the level of care that I did the first time, and if she became abusive again, then she could direct it at our son too, and I wouldn't tolerate a single instance of that. The very moment she tried to become cruel to him, I would take him and she would never see us again. I'm lost and I'm mad. I feel lied to, or betrayed, or like a fool. Like I've been conned or taken advantage of. All the bad feelings I had toward her from the pregnancy are bubbling up. I don't know what I feel or how to talk to her. And edit, I'm not having sex until this is resolved, so you can all stop posting about that. As I said in another comment, I don't have any sexual appetite for her at this time anyway, because of how sad, angry, upset, and frustrated I am. So I have no problem pausing sex. Now in the comments, make it clear to her what actually happened during her pregnancy, and do not be nice. You almost died, but if you want to risk that, that's your decision. What is not your decision is to risk treating me the way you did during the pregnancy. You weren't mean, you weren't a nightmare, you weren't even toxic. You were far, far beyond any of that. You yelled at me for the smallest things. You hit me, injured me, you threatened to kill me. You became the worst imaginable abuser to me while I was taking care of you and doing everything in my power to help you. The fact we are still together and I was able to love you again makes me a saint. Your pregnancy made you the worst piece of crap abuser imaginable. I repeat, you threatened to kill me several times. You will not subject me to that again. Little bit of a writing exercise that, but point is to take the gloves off here. She might be in denial of what happened, or she might even have legitimately kind of forgotten exactly how bad it was. And you need to make it clear exactly how bad it was. Hold nothing back, and do not sugarcoat or put it in any other light than the black void that it was. Good luck. You both need to go to therapy and/or counseling to work through this. In her mind, her actions had no consequences, aside from a few months of sleeping in different rooms. You are still with her, and she clearly doesn't care or remember how abusive she was toward you. And I hate to say this, but you should start wearing condoms or participating in another form of birth control aside from her pills. The fact that she said you don't get to say no is a red flag that she may ignore your decision and stop taking her pill without telling you. And OP replies, I interpreted her "you don't just get to say no" comment to mean you can't say no without talking it out at all, which I understand. But I thought we had already talked it all out. We spent a year talking it all out, and we mutually agreed that she should never get pregnant again. I thought we both already said no. And yeah, the sex thing. I was afraid to mention it because it seemed like a dramatic thought, but I've been worrying over that too. I won't be having any sex until this is resolved. This fight is a huge turn-off anyway, so I don't think it'll be a problem. I can't exactly find her attractive when I have all these sad, angry, and hurt feelings right now. Someone else says, for the love of God, schedule your vasectomy. That sucks. Does she fully remember how awful and abusive she was to you? It sounds like she had a psychiatric break during her pregnancy. You are already clear that this is a deal breaker for you, so I'd suggest that the next time you speak about that, you are clear you will leave if she puts you in that situation. You should not tolerate being abused again, and it's awful that she would even consider getting pregnant again, considering everything that happened the last time. OP replies, I assume she remembers. We have had many discussions about everything that happened during her pregnancy, including how she treated me. I'd say like 80% of all conversations we had in the first year after my son's birth were about it. It has been 8-ish months since we had a real conversation about any of it, but I thought that was because we had resolved everything and felt good about it. I hope she wouldn't have forgotten all of our talks over the last 8 months. And now on to the update. So, wife and I were able to talk the day after that post. Unfortunately, it didn't go very well. Before I left for work, I hugged her, said I'm sorry for immediately saying no, and that I wanted to talk through it after work and hear all of her thoughts about it. She agreed, both said I love yous, and things seemed calm and positive as I left. That night, I asked her why she changed her mind about another baby, and just what she was thinking overall. She basically said she's getting older, her window for another baby is closing, and it made her realize she wanted at least one more, and that she also really wants a girl. I asked what happens if it's not a girl, and she said in that case we would try again. I asked if she remembered the last pregnancy, how dangerous it was, how her kidneys were permanently damaged from it, how she was so sick that I had to basically be her live-in nurse, and that if she got pregnant again, she could have total kidney failure and died. She said she's not worried because she knows God will protect her and will provide what we need. That really threw me off. I don't think I've ever heard her speak about a God like that at any point in our entire 6-year relationship. We are not religious people. I don't think we have ever been in a church together. Our wedding wasn't even in a church. We don't own a Bible. The last time I was in a church was my mum's funeral 9 years ago. After the God comment, I didn't know what to say. I was just shocked, and I laid my head on the back of the couch and looked up at the ceiling. She asked what was wrong. I said that this is a lot, that she is saying the opposite of what we had previously agreed, and I don't think I can change my mind on this because I don't want her to get deathly sick, and that I don't think I can go through the abuse again. I did use the word abuse, which maybe I shouldn't have because it set her off. She started ranting. Abuse? What abuse? You're accusing me of abuse? I reminded her of the coffee cup, throwing food on the floor, the name-calling, the slandering me to my friends and family, and multiple other incidents. But she just kept talking over me. You really think that's who I am? I want another baby, and this is what you think about? I said yes, it is what I think about because it's what happened last time. Everything just fell apart from there. She was yelling and crying, I couldn't get a word in. Calling me a bunch of names, saying that I don't love her, I can't understand what it's like for her. Why can't I just give her this one thing? It's what God wants for us. It's God's plan. And on and on and on like this. I couldn't calm her down or convince her to go to bed. She was following me around the house and angry crying. One thing that really concerned me is she said something like, loving our son is much easier for me because he looks like me, that she can't see any of herself in him and it isn't fair and that's why she wants a daughter. She made it sound like she doesn't love our son and could only love a daughter that looks like her. Finally, all the noise woke our kid back up and I told her that I have to take him on a drive to get him back to sleep. I drove around for an hour, put him back to bed, and she was awake but locked in our room. So I slept in the living room again. She left early the next morning, and I later found out she went to her mum's house. She was gone the whole day, so the kid and I had the day together. We eventually went to my older brother and sister-in-law's, both mid-30s, house, and I kind of vented to them. I was very surprised to hear sister-in-law say, yeah, we've been waiting for this, and that it took longer than expected. My brother agreed, and they basically said that they've seen this in her for as long as we've been together, and were concerned but unsurprised with her behavior during the pregnancy, and that the pregnancy let the genie out of the bottle, that who she was at that time is who she really is. They see her slipping more into that behavior every time we hang out, and they are more concerned. I told my wife that Kiddo and I were staying at brother's last night. She never replied, and that's where I still am today. I took a sick day today and probably will tomorrow. I'm lucky my boy is such an easygoing kiddo. 90% of the day, he is giggly and happy and loves to give hugs. For me, he honestly relieves more stress than he creates, and luckily my brother and sister-in-law can't get enough of him. I think I might have to divorce my wife. I've been talking to my brother about it and mentioning marriage therapy, but he said to be careful because therapy could just make my wife hide her ways just long enough to get pregnant again. He says she is very manipulative and is relieved that I'm finally starting to see it. I really didn't think she was that kind of person, but I guess I've been willfully ignorant this whole time. As some of you said in the last post, I think I've been lying to myself. Brother and sister-in-law say she didn't go back to normal after the birth, she just dialed it back a little, and I told myself it was normal. I feel lost. I think I need to get divorced. I don't want to, but I think the only other option is to stay with her, which I also don't want to do. I wish I could stay with my son at my brother's forever, and never have to acknowledge the real world ever again. And now in the comments, what's enlightening was you said abuse, and she reverted to abuse. You called it. Interesting that all this talk of children and no real concern for her child. Listen to your family. Racists hate to be called racists, abusers hate to be called abusers. It is very similar. OP, one thing to note, abusers very frequently, always, accuse their victim of abuse. Don't buy it. It is distraction and projection intended to save their image to themselves and others. Sounds like your family won't buy it either. Going forward, document, 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 record, record, record. While it may not be admissible in divorce court, it can help with family. Watch for her escalating to the physical. Police are horrid in physical violence calls, but it almost always goes worse for men. You could find yourself accused of physical abuse in an incident that she initiates. Police very often arrest the man, regardless of the circumstances. Lots of stigma there. Wow, I'm so sorry you're having to deal with all of this. It's really concerning that your brother and sister-in-law saw this coming. Makes me wonder what they've been seeing that you haven't. Did they share any examples that may have triggered a realization for you? And as someone else pointed out, counseling with an abuser is bad news. Absolutely, you should seek counseling for yourself to help you work through this awful situation though. And OP replies, our wedding/honeymoon and our finances have a repeated topic of concern from brother and sister-in-law. I didn't get any say in any of the wedding and honeymoon, she wanted full control, and basically just wanted me to pay and show up. I was sad about it, but eventually brushed it off by saying it's the most important day of a woman's life, and the day is about her, so I should let her do what she wants. I know now that a wedding is supposed to be about us, not just her, but at the time I was hearing from everyone on her side that it is her special day, and I didn't want to rock the boat and start our marriage off on a bad foot. We are not super financially stable. I wanted to wait longer for a child because she wanted to be a stay-at-home mom, but my finances made that very hard. But she didn't want to wait, so we got pregnant, she quit her job during the pregnancy, and hasn't been back. Luckily, I've received some pay bumps since then, and don't have to work as much overtime now, but our finances are still stretched pretty thin, and it's a big stressor for me. It would certainly help if she got a part-time job, but she has never allowed that conversation. I know that I'm a massive pushover. I think of myself as easygoing, but my brother says I'm avoiding conflict by letting her do whatever she wants. He's right. It just sucks that it took this long for me to stop lying to myself. Wow. So you need to dig deep for a very good lawyer because she is going to try to bleed you dry in the divorce. She has no intention of ever working again. OP says, I mean, we've been married for 6 years, and she's only been out of work for about 3 years, and we don't own a home, we rent, and we own 2 shitbox cars, have some shared credit card debt, and a tiny savings, and I have a very sad little pension through my job. I feel like there isn't very much to bleed me of. OP says her PPD was treated relatively quickly, but I have doubts. Either pregnancy triggered a mental change that hasn't been properly addressed, or she is always a little unhinged and hid it well. I don't know how OP didn't run after the first thrown dish. My guess is a little from column A and a little from column B. She wants another baby so bad, but had no problems up until leaving her current toddler and not talking to him for the last few days. No, you see, it'll be different when she has a daughter. Until the daughter starts to grow up and become an independent person. Alright, and that's where I'm going to end today's episode, guys. I hope you did enjoy. If you did, let me know what you thought of it down in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.